everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 3, Episode 20. It is called Tin Man. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. And first things first, I have to get something out of the way.
Damn it.
Right? I have to get something out of the way.
So, I knew this was coming.
I complained on Twitter after we recorded the last episode, because when I went to edit it and upload the stuff and all that, I discovered something that Vash...
You don't get to backdate this one. No. You don't get to backdate it.
No, I'm not backdating it. This is context for what I'm building up to. So I discovered that Vash, the actress who played Vash, who I did think looked familiar, although I think I forget what it was now, but when I looked her up, it was something else I knew her face from. It wasn't this thing. But it turned out she was actually in one single scene of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I checked up what episode it was, and she's literally just in a scene in season 3 where it's like a joke scene where Buffy's trying to gain a letter of recommendation from a teacher, and she spends a minute talking to this teacher about how her class has changed her life and how important it is to her. And you can see the punchline coming a mile away, where the teacher ends the scene with, "Yeah, who are you exactly?" That's kind of a joke.
We don't need the context of the scene.
The point is, but that's the whole thing. She wasn't even credited for the episode. That's how small a part this was, right? But I was pissed that there was an opportunity to link to Buffy, and I didn't use it. And lo and behold, the Star Trek gods have delivered to me a chance of redemption in the very next episode. Who beams aboard the Enterprise in this episode? None other than the mayor from season 3 of the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yes.
Absolute bullshit.
Apparently he pops up again in, not as the same character I don't think, but he pops up again in both Voyager and Enterprise, so we're going to see him a couple times over the course of this long saga. But the premise of this episode, the premise of Tin Man, is that he is a Betazoid, but he is a sort of one in... They never actually gave me a ratio, but I'll say 1 in a million, where every so often, in a rare case, a Betazoid can actually have more telepathic abilities, where they can outright just read thoughts, and they hear thoughts.
And they're always on.
Yes, they can't turn it off, they can't really kind of tune it out. So a lot of them suffer from mental issues because of it. It was
kind of likened to almost like a learning disability in the way that there are some people who are just born with it and they have to overcome this to adapt to become part of society, like this guy has. Yeah.
But a lot of people don't get through it. He was lucky that he was diagnosed early and they were able to try and train him and sort of get over it. But he's always been kind of on edge because of it. He has clearly difficulty communicating with people. He has difficulty being around other people. But anyway, he's because he can read minds, though, because he hears things so clearly from other beings, he's often used as a mitigator, either in negotiations or whenever they're trying to broker peace, things like that. Especially useful, I imagine, when the other beings don't speak a similar language. The universal translator maybe can't translate them yet because they're new. It's not programmed with the stuff. And he's brought aboard because they've found this essentially a sentient spaceship which is drifting through a part of the galaxy where a star is about to go supernova. So not only is it about going out and making first contact with this essentially new life form that they've never encountered before, it's also about saving it because it's going to die.
Yeah, I got some strong inspiration for Mass Effect vibes going on here. The Betazoid is uncomfortable around people, to say the least. He, people don't like him either because of how...
Yeah, his name's Tam, by the way. Tam Elbrum is his name.
Yeah, he's very awkward because he reads everyone's thoughts and knows what they're going to say before. He says he doesn't have any social niceties to let them just say the things. He just goes, yeah, whatever, and just answers before they even get to say anything.
Yeah, that's his character. So he comes on board and they're trying to get to it. Unfortunately for the crew of the Enterprise, Romulans are also aware of this ship and want to get to it. And the reason why the episode's called Tin Man is because that's the code name that they've given this ship. They call it the Tin Man. And they're trying to get there, and that's kind of a race before the Romulans and yada, yada, yada. And it builds up from there. That's basically the gist of the episode, so I'll ask the question. Connor, how did you feel about Tin Man?
I thought it was pretty solid. I thought it had a really strong ending, but it definitely sagged a bit throughout the majority of the middle section.
Yeah, I thought it was a frustrating episode because I really liked the ideas it was playing with, and I really liked kind of the dramatic beat it tries to make at the end with Data. I appreciated what it was doing. Unfortunately, I don't think it lands because I don't think the episode actually sets it up well enough, and the setting up that it does do feels a little bit kind of, I don't know, surface level, kind of in your face. It doesn't feel like it naturally. I think it's because the Data stuff before the ending actually feels like it's not that important. It feels like it's relatively. It feels like that's just like a fun little extra thing they added into the script because they realized they could sort of compare that he feels different to everyone and Data feels different to everyone. So there's some form of.
It's just nice little basic bonding of here we go. You know, there's a reason for these characters to communicate nicely.
But when it became kind of the linchpin of the ending and kind of the point of the episode, it felt like that. It felt like it betrayed what the episode was. And I suppose really what I should say is that it felt like the episode never really quite solidified what it was doing or what it was about. And I think this one also suffered a little bit from over discussing the technical side of things. There was a lot of stuff in the first half, I felt, where they're talking about where they're going, which part of space it's in, and what this entity is. There was a lot, and Star Trek by its nature has a lot of gobbledygook, has a lot of names of places, things, science talk about whatever. I don't know if it was just between them talking about the capabilities of what they can do, between Geordi trying to fix things, between talking about what this entity might be. It felt like there was an exceptional amount in this episode, which would be fine, except for the fact that I felt like the vast majority of it ended up not feeling like it needed to be told. And looking back at that first half of the episode, that really should have been spent with Data and Tam kind of building that bond, or even just starting an arc for Data where he needs to have the lesson that he learns by the end, because that was the big problem I had. Is it gets to the end of the episode and the whole point is that Data says, "Oh, I've realized that I am where I belong, where I feel home," and I don't really feel like the start of the episode set that up to something that he needed to answer.
I agree. There's a point where right before that he's saying whatever it is he's saying to Troy. She's like, "Data, you understand?" I'm like, yeah, was he not supposed to? Like, it didn't really feel like he was supposed to be confused by this in this episode.
Yeah,
it just kind of felt like out of nowhere for that very final beat.
I mean, there was a little bit of him questioning things because Tam was pointing out what he was like. He was, "Oh, you paint, you do this, you do that, you have," and Data was like, "Well, I have no mind, I have no feelings," because that's the thing is Tam is surprised that he can't hear anything from Data, so he actually likes being around Data because he doesn't get bombarded with. Although we do hear that he does hear the entire ship all the time, so his range on his abilities is really overwhelming. It's not like he just hears us in the room, but presumably it's easier when they're all further away.
I think so, and I think the other bit that you may be overlooking a tad there is he talks about how nice it is to get to know someone.
Oh, sure,
not just understand them immediately. I think that's more what it is. Not just the silence, because like you say, there's still all the other noise there all the time. It's more just the experience of talking with him and learning about him is kind of new for him.
Yeah, so they do kind of set up a little bit that they're relaying his want to be human, or that Data might in some way, maybe obviously not feels the right word because it's Data, but there may be some shame that he isn't human. That's why he has this desire to be human. And Tam kind of points out like, "Hey, it's okay to be different. There's nothing wrong with that."
I think the problem is it doesn't feel any more overt than any other time we do this with Data. And not even like when we do a Data episode, just occasionally we'll have a beat like this with Data.
That's the sad part about the ending not landing, is that the final point being, because many times we've had him sort of find his self-worth or find out or kind of have that journey, like you say, where he questions how human he is, and there'll be some sort of moment where obviously it's not tied up in a bow, because we're never going to really do that, because he's always going to have this need for being a human or want of being a human. But the end of this episode I thought was a different spin on it, though. This idea that him realizing that he is where he belongs, he feels the reason why he doesn't feel is empty or feel like he's missing something in the same way that Tam does, because Tam's never felt at home. He's never found like a family. That's something he says to Troy, because Troy knows him. Troy was actually like he was her patient like once upon a time when she was in university, so she has a history with him. And there's something to be said there that he realizes that he could feel much worse. And again, feeling's not a good word to use with Data, but for lack of a better term, he could be in a much worse place. but the realization that he's already found a home, he's already found a purpose for himself, and how fulfilling that is, and maybe he's taken that for granted. There was something kind of beautiful about the idea of him realizing that. I just don't think the episode sufficiently gives him enough of a journey to go on that makes that ending feel like, because it's a sweet moment in and of itself. The moment's handled well. I love Troy hugging him, like, even though that's something that never happens really, is Data being hugged. Like, you know, she kind of goes up and hugs him, and he's kind of like, this is weird, but okay.
No, I agree. It's why I said I really like the ending, and not just this scene. I think all the stuff over on the ship with Tam, I quite like that stuff as well. But I like it more than the episode deserves, if that makes sense. Like, I like the ideas. I like all the in a vacuum. I really like these scenes and what they're doing, but the episode doesn't really deserve how good they are.
I think the other problem with the episode is that some of the other elements that are introduced don't feel like they're needed and essentially go nowhere. What I'm talking about here is the fact that Riker has beef with him because he was part of a negotiation with the Genosians, I think they said, where it went wrong and there was like a fight and lots of Starfleet, you know, like 40 people died from Starfleet because this went south. And even though he knows it's not really his fault, he was such a prime figure at the center of it. He has this kind of like doubt about his skills, about his capabilities, and what he's about to do for them. And this is something where, you know, again, it shows that Tam hears this in his head, so he kind of says, "No, like, you know,
if they'd listened to me, it would have gone fine."
So he hears other people's doubt, and that's again another good thing for Tam's character. But ultimately, this never really goes anywhere. I don't think there's never really any payoff to them believing in him later on in the episode, or Riker kind of coming to respect him in some way, or anything like that. There's never like a whatever beat it could have led to. I mean, those might be the obvious ones. Maybe there's something more interesting to do with it, but it never went anywhere is my problem. It just kind of faded to the background.
There's a few things that feel like that. Like, there's multiple scenes of Geordi fixing shields for no real reason. And I mean, the actual scenes themselves are way more extended than they need to be. The first one, he gets a call down from the bridge, and he answers them, and then starts talking to, you know, his lackeys who are in there. And at first, I didn't even realize he'd hung up the call, so to speak, until he presses his badge again and goes, "Right, okay, here's the situation." I'm like, I don't know why we needed any of that stuff in the middle. And then the second one is just him, you know, trying a couple of things again with some lackeys, like, "Right, you do this, you do that," and then we watch them do it for like, I don't know, a minute, and it just feels pointless.
I think I'd forgive that if the action and like, can they survive this was like a major part, and maybe it should, because it feels like there's a lot of elements here. Again, the other thing I want to bring up here is the Romulan side of things, that it's not that it doesn't go anywhere, because it does. Like, it's a major factor in the conflict.
Undercooked, though.
It's undercooked. It doesn't feel like it's necessary. I feel like the threat of the star going is probably enough.
We've said this on a handful of episodes before, where we've already got the ticking time bomb, so to speak. We don't need a second element of threat just for the sake of it. It feels like it's there to pad the runtime a little.
The weird thing is that I feel like if you wanted to like take away one of the elements and devote it to the Romulan side to develop this idea that the Romulans want it as well, because I do like being reminded that the Romulans are kind of this hostile, that they're vying for these things, that they're out there doing stuff. I like the reminders of those things in general.
Yeah, and I like the idea that when the Romulans can't communicate, they're like, right, screw it, just destroy it.
And even just the idea that they have one Romulan ship that basically pushes its engines so much that they can't get back. This is essentially, I mean, presumably they could transfer the people on board to the other ship when it gets there, but the idea that because they know their ship's slower at top speed than the Enterprise, they send one ship so quicker beyond its engine's capabilities, so that it essentially overheats and overloads and they can't get back, just to beat them. And then the ship that's going at normal speed eventually arrives later. Interesting little tactic. I thought that was fine to hear. Because I think the idea of the ship being in peril is a good idea, in the sense that this entity, this Tin Man, it chooses to save the Enterprise. It actually saves the Enterprise by pushing it away just before the supernova incident happens. Which I think is, again, a nice idea. It makes for something where, okay, this sentient ship of sorts, whatever it may be, that once had a crew but doesn't anymore, hasn't for millennia, and it's just been drifting with nothing, never feeling, just always been alone. essentially wanting to commit suicide. It knows the supernova is going to happen. That's eventually, because we find out that Tam is loosely communicating with it in the sense that it's getting a sense of things. It's almost like he's getting what Troy gets from most people when she's next to them.
Yeah, just it's lonely. It feels alone. It's just there and doesn't know what it's doing.
But so it wants to commit suicide, and the funny thing is the ending I think leaves it kind of ambiguous as if it actually does or not, because like the ship and Tam have found each other and have found like someone to relate to basically.
Some purpose in each other.
So I get the impression it might have just teleported away or whatever, because it teleports Data back to the bridge, because Data goes with Tam and Data's fine, and that's what leads to Data saying essentially he was relieved when he came back, and he knew this was his purpose, that he never felt what, and again, felt is a bad word. It's just hard to talk about Data when it comes, because
it's fine. I think we can just use felt, and that's the spirit of it is intended.
Yeah. But he realizes that he never was like this. He was never like Tam because he had this purpose, and maybe just didn't realize it. I think that's a really sweet idea. But like I say, I could easily cut everything with Riker not liking the guy because of what happened in the past. It didn't really feel like it was that necessary.
I think the very first instance of it, like before we even meet the guy, is fine, because it just sets up the background of this character. And it's not just Riker individually with this grudge, more just, this guy's got a reputation. It's the scene where
it feels
he's
personal.
Then confronted about it, that it feels personal.
Yeah, it feels personal afterwards, so it feels like it needs a payoff, and it never does have one. No, you're right. Just the general reaction of, well, this is the guy that was involved in that kind of thing. Yeah, that was fine. Yeah, I can get on board with that. It's frustrating because I would say it's a good episode, honestly. If you asked me to say, like, describe it in a word, I'd say it's good. It's not great because it kind of whiffs on some of its ideas. It doesn't cook them enough, I guess. But it is good. It's got good ideas. It's got a good feeling, and I think the actor, Harry Groner, who plays Tam, he's pretty solid. I mean, it might be a case of, like, this is maybe an example of where they spend too much time on the guest star. He gets a lot of screen time here. Maybe
he does.
And I think he probably does need a lot, but I think Data should have is just as much, I guess is what I'm saying. And if you take out things like either the Romulan element or the personal Riker element and some of the tech stuff with Jordan, it just feels like it's padding, then maybe that gets the time to develop that could have made the ending really sing and pay off.
Focus a little bit too much. It's like a meal with too many sides.
Yeah. Yes, but the main course is...
But the plate is still the same size, and you've just reduced the size of the main element, and you've like, well, didn't really want all of these sides. Could have just done with more of the main.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bad comparison or example for me because I love to load it up with the mashed potato if I've got the choice.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong, so do I. But the sentiment, it says a lot that we both went to a roast dinner in that comparison, because that was exactly the thing I went to, and I went, is that too British? Is that too far?
The mashed potato and gravy is the best part of the whole thing. I'll say it, right? The meat's the thing that justifies it being a meal, but what I'm really there for is lots of mashed potato and gravy.
I don't disagree with that as someone who has far too much mashed potato and gravy every time. Like, to the point where Paige complains at me for cooking too much mash. I'm like, no, it's fine. It's fine. I'll eat it. Don't worry. every time. So, yeah. So I don't want to be too hard on it because I do actually, I like the actor, I like the guest star, I like the ideas that it's playing with, and I think it's more. I really like the opening.
Oh sure.
With the other captain and just that camaraderie between. Between Starfleet officers. Yeah.
It's just this other guy telling Picard what's going to happen.
But they're all on first name basis. It's friendly, and he's like, making little digs at Riker. Like, how's it going over there on that luxury cruise liner? Yeah.
And I think the other thing it maybe suffers from is that some of the scenes with Tam are a little bit repetitious in the middle. It kind of maybe replays the same point again a couple times,
just with different characters.
Yeah, and you probably could have condensed that in a way that was far more, just conclusive in what it was doing. Far more, maybe better use of its time. Yeah. So that's I guess that's the ultimate complaint with this one, is that it just doesn't make good use of its time, and therefore the overall quality of all the ideas suffers, even though the ideas themselves are really good. And the frustrating part of that is that, unlike a genuinely bad episode where the idea from scratch is just too goofy or it's just a sort of generic episode, is I actually think this one had potential to be great. This one had potential to be great, and it falls short of that, and it's an easy enough watch, and it's one that, like, I'm not someone who skips episodes, but if I ever was doing a rewatch, and this year I did say, oh, you know what, they're so standalone, I'm going to skip some of the shitty ones for time. I probably wouldn't skip this one, because I think there's enough interesting stuff in this to make it worth watching.
Oh, definitely, especially when compared to, like, the last one, where, yeah, that one would probably be a skip.
Oh, yeah, it's way better than Indiana Picard.
Yeah, a lot better.
Yes. Although notably, both episodes, did I tell you this at the start, that both have an actor from the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer in it?
Somehow throw something at you in a minute.
Let's see if we can make it a hat trick. Come on, 3 in a row, baby. 3 in a row. Speaking of the next episode, though, I should probably look ahead and see what's...
The worst part is, just because of the time period it's in, there's a reasonable chance that, yeah, you could get another one.
I mean, hell, but we've had tons of them so far. We had, Principal Snyder, Armin Shimmerman was Ferengi, and he's going to shop again. And then we've had... who else have we had? We've had a bunch. Oh,
we've had plenty over it. But I mean, we're at that stage where 3 in a row isn't impossible, given that I think we're probably in 1990 now at this point.
91 maybe at this point in the season. So, yeah, I mean, the point is we're only about 6 years from Buffy.
Yeah. We're in the timeline where those actors doing side and smaller roles are popping up all over the place in various TV shows. Yeah.
So, and it is worth mentioning, I did notice his age here, Harry Groener. It's not like a big difference, but I could tell he was younger. He looked younger.
Yeah. It's like I say, it's only maybe 5 or 6 years, but it's noticeable.
Yeah. It was the same when Terry Hatcher showed up, and it's about 4 years, 5 years before Lois and Clark. It's kind of
it's not a big difference, but there's just sometimes you can tell.
Yeah, I think with Terry Hatcher, because she's probably just past that age where she might have been playing a teenager just before.
Yeah, is this when we did Sisters?
What?
Is this on this show?
Yeah, she was on Next Gen.
Was she? I don't remember.
She was in the episode where the study Han Solo dude came on board and was flirting with everyone.
Oh god, yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, she was just randomly.
That was a forgettable episode.
It was a forgettable episode, but that was the most notable thing about it, is that it was a random young Terry Hatcher just there doing O'Brien's job for a minute, because he wasn't going to flirt with O'Brien. I mean, maybe he could have tried. If anything, I'd like to see that scene, to be honest. But anyway, next episode is called Hollow Pursuits. The description in IMDb is as follows. A shy member of the Enterprise crew becomes addicted to the holodeck, where relationships are easier than real life, when his knowledge is needed in engineering. This actually sounds oddly ahead of its time.
It does. I was just thinking that.
That sounds like, I don't know, someone on an MMO or something like that. Like, I don't know.
It sounds like someone really liked the movie Her and then went back in time and did a Star Trek episode on it.
Or even like just social media, like the idea that you get to know someone on Twitter, but that's all you ever get, kind of thing, because it's easier than real life. I don't know. Like that feels ahead of its time. So,
well, let's see if it pulls it off first.
I mean, admittedly, it may not pull it off. Yes, we'll have to go see. But, pretty interesting. All right, well, we'll see how that is next time. What's interesting, though, just going from the image here, and given the way it described it, it sounds like it's a guest star. It's not someone. It's not one of the main crew. So, curious to see how they tackle this.
Better not be another Buffy.
I don't recognize them from the small image, but I mean, we'll find out.
It's a good start.
Yeah. So. Yes, because that was the thing, actually, is I put in the Blu-ray, right, and I got to the menu, and there's like a little thumbnail for each episode, right? And as soon as I saw the thumbnail, I went, "I also the mayor from Buffy. Is that who I think it is?"
Low-hanging fruit, this one, wasn't it?
I don't feel too bad about the last one, because she was literally in one scene uncredited.
I feel bad that you felt the need to get it in at the start of this one. You could have just ignored that and just told us the story of this one and claimed this one. You just like, no, you had to make a point that was one in last week's too.
No, because this was redemption. This was a redemption. The fact that I got one in the very next episode was a big deal. But that has been our discussion of episode 20 of season 3. Let us know what you think in the comments. Please do liking is important on YouTube. It gives us more recommendations out to people. YouTube will put us in the suggested videos list and things like that, so please do like. It is the easiest free way to support everything we do, as does rating the podcast and Apple Podcast. If you want to support us with a little bit of money, you can do that over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month, and keep all the content coming. Get some bonuses as well while you're at it, especially at some of the higher tiers. $5, for example, you get these Star Trek reviews early, so go and have a look and see if you're interested and doing all that. But get us on Twitter as well at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. But that is us, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, guys, and remember, when it comes to the ladies, Wesley Crusher is in complete control.